Welcome back. Thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're going to talk about The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I'm going to give you my slightly spoilerish thoughts on the story and whether or not I enjoyed it. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig is a book that came out in 2020, and the summary of this title is Nora Seed is a character who is in her mid-30s, and she works at a music store. And she very quickly, at the onset of the text of the story, we find out that she has lost her job. She has lost relationship with her brother. She has lost a relationship. She has a very distant relationship with her best friend, and her cat has died. And this all happens within the first few pages. The book is by a British author. It is very matter of fact, so occasionally there's kind of this dry wit. But as far as it being matter of fact, we'll have lines like 27 hours before she decided to die. So that is the premise of the story: is that she feels unnecessary. She feels unwanted, and she regrets everything. She is disillusioned, and because of this, she decides that she is going to end her life. And when she does this, she actually awakens in a library. And the actual librarian for this is a figure from her childhood that she remembers from school, and she quickly is told that every title in this library, there are hundreds, maybe millions of books on the shelves, but every title on that library is an alternate version of her life, something that was slightly different, something that might have been changed, a decision that she might have made that was a little bit different. And in order for her to try to find the meaning of life, this is how the book begins. She has to look at the book of regrets. And in that book of regrets is a whole list of every single regret that she has ever had in her entire life, from the moment of childhood to present day. And this could have been not continuing with the swim team, not pursuing her dreams of playing music in a rock band with her brother, not deciding to be a philosopher, not deciding to join her best friend in Australia, and which is where her best friend is nowadays. So it becomes this story that we have seen quite a few times. I would say you're getting this kind of story that is a little bit like Sliding Doors. If anyone remembers that film from 1998, has Gwyneth Paltrow, and the whole conceit of the film is she is trying to make a train, and then two different paths or two different storylines happen in the movie. The one where she got on the train and the one where she missed it. I will say that the movie itself, one of those choices has a quote-unquote happy ending. But even with that being said, there's a lot of sad or kind of messed up stuff that happens to her character. But the point is that these are storylines that we've seen before. Whether it's a story like A Christmas Carol, or it's a story like It's a Wonderful Life, of course, another spin on A Christmas Carol, even to another extent Groundhog Day, and more recently films like Palm Springs and Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is amazing. You should definitely go see that if you haven't yet. And it's the whole storyline of, in the Midnight Library, she has to pick a regret. And the moment that she does, the librarian will give her the book that corresponds with the life that would have happened had she made that choice, or had that different element, that different path been taken. And there is it's not time travel. It's definitely she embodies herself, but just in a different life. So it is very multiversal in that regard. Um, when she embodies herself, as the story progresses, if she regrets, if she still has regrets, if she doesn't end up loving or wanting to remain in that life, she gets taken back to the library and she's back where she started. She has to pick another book. As she goes through, she ends up having different professions, and I'm not really giving too much away here, but she ends up being a rock star. She ends up being an Olympic level swimmer. She ends up moving to Australia to live with her friend, and she also ends up being a wife, which is one of the choices that she wished she would have made with one of her partners. And I think what this story does really well is it makes you realize the context. Sometimes when we look back at situations, sometimes when we look back at even pop culture, we look back at movies and we remember them fondly from our childhood, but then we watch them again when we're older and we realize that maybe that movie was actually very, very bad. This actually leads into an idea that I have. I might do for videos where I want to do something that is nostalgic magic or nostalgic tragic. I am an artist, so I do have a painting that I just finished here in the background. But the whole point of that series of video will be I go back to revisit a film or a story from my childhood and look back at it and watch it again with fresher, older eyes to find out if it's something that should actually be held up as a place or as a piece of some gold standard, something that I should remember fondly, or if it has not aged very well. And at the end, maybe I'll do a painting or some type of art piece based on that fact, whether it is nostalgic magic, it is something that does hold up, or it's nostalgic tragic, something that we have looked back with rose tinted glasses. And getting back to the Midnight Library, I think that is something that this does very well. It allows Nora the space and the story to explore these other what ifs, to find out if she is remembering something fondly, but maybe it didn't actually happen that way, or to an extent where she maybe didn't appreciate certain aspects, certain things that might have saved her from a life where she would still have been miserable. And that does it is something that I connected with. I have had an English teacher once who pointed out that the fact that we love a story so much has to do oftentimes with how we connect to that story. So the way that I connected with this is that probably about 5 or 7 years ago, I went to high school reunion in my hometown. I grew up in a very small town in the Midwest United States, and it was always something I was struggling against the confines, the restrictions of that small town, the narrow-mindedness. If you wanted to listen to music, you had country music and rap music. You didn't have punk music, and yet you didn't have anything else other than those two genres. And for years, I just wanted to get out of this small town to the point where when I was a teenager, I ran away, or I would take any opportunity I could to be out of town somewhere at a summer camp or living with a friend somewhere in a different town. The grass is always greener on the other side. And I spent probably the better part of 10 to 15 years kind of resenting the people that had stayed in that small town. But when I went back for the high school reunion that we had, these were people that were so, by appearance sake, happy and or successful, and even just catching up with everyone. And it made me realize that these people had chosen to live there. It wasn't that they were stuck there. They had chosen that because that was their happiness. And it put it into a different perspective for me that I shouldn't look down on anyone. It was such an asshole mentality to have, that the fact that you stayed in this small town, obviously you didn't make it. No, they chose to be there because they knew what made them happy, and staying in the town that they grew up in, that they had family, that they had friends, was what made them successful, what made them happy. So I think with the Midnight Library, that's absolutely something that I connected with. This book had the potential to be a very depressing read. Um, it even starts with a Sylvia Plath quote. You find out right at the beginning, like I said, that she loses her job, her cat dies, and the main character is going to end her life. And ultimately, what actually happened is, as the story progresses, it becomes a very hopeful message. It becomes something that you want to keep reading. It's a very fast, light read, I would say. Every chapter written very quickly, very compelling. Either a chapter is a life that she's living, or we're just moving rapid fire on to the next thing. And so this was a book that I devoured pretty quickly. And I will say the ending left me very satisfied, as far as, I felt like I had read a good book, but I also had read a book that imparted a good message. And with that being said, I did want to share some of the quotes that I really enjoyed from the book, that kind of connected with me. Um, and actually, before I do that, I will say another element of the story is that, as Nora goes through these other lives, these other versions of her, um, she does have that very "It's a Wonderful Life" type of moment where she doesn't realize how much she's touching other people's lives, or how much she's affecting other people's lives just by being there. So she begins the book very unnecessary. That's her whole mentality. She feels very unnecessary, um, and it's a very self-centered uh, outlook. And as the story progresses, she realizes that there were moments where she wasn't there for her brother, or that she left relationships with her because of the self-imposed mental incarceration against that relationship, or just the self-defeat. And it starts turning her perspective a little outward. She realizes that there's somebody whose teen life she could be there to be a good role model for, just by the fact of being there. Her neighbor is someone that she could help just by being there. Her best friend, her brother, the relationship with her mother. These are all things that she can improve just by being there. And I think that's what the story actually left me feeling with. Partially the fact that sometimes you just need to be present. But and some of that will spill into some of these quotes that I did very much connect to or really enjoy with the book. Um, we often go through our lives, and we don't realize we're just so focused on this self nihilistic type of outlook where everything bad is happening to us, but we don't realize oftentimes that there are people who enjoy our company, there are people who love us, there are people that we should be around or who enjoy being around us. And there are valuable things that we can contribute to our own lives, or to other people's lives. It doesn't even have to be about everyone else. It can be just about ourselves. I think one of the messages about this is absolutely that you lose so much by worrying what's going to happen next, as opposed to just living in the moment. And I think that was a very powerful message to take away from this book. Keep in mind, as I mentioned, this is a light read. This is something that could have easily been depressing, but you're really rooting for Nora as she goes through these alternate lives and experiences these way out there different types of careers, different types of pathways that she could have taken. So, intentionally or not, the lives that we touch are sometimes something that can be extremely important. Um, and there was something that, again, to connect with that, um, a YOLO kind of mentality was when I needed to psych myself out to do something. Case in point, starting this whole YouTube channel. It is something that I would always tell myself, you only ever get that date once in your entire life. So I'm filming this in July. I will only ever have this Sunday in July 2022 in my entire life. I do not get this date back again. So why can't I make the most of it? Why can't I make the best of it and do this now? And that was how I would psych myself out, or psych myself up to do the things that scared me, or to talk to people. I'm a very extroverted introvert in some respects. I love being around people, but it is very difficult for me to open up to people. So I keep delaying this, but we'll go into the quotes. One of the characters that she meets, she does actually meet another. We'll call him a traveler. In the book, they call him they call him Sliders, which is kind of I think a cheeky reference to the '90s, late '90s TV show Sliders, which was kind of like Quantum Leap, where you had people living in different versions or different universes. But this character tells her. An Albert Camus quote, "You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life. You will never really truly live or appreciate what you have if you keep looking for the meaning of it." I'm not the most seasoned Camus reader. I didn't actually know a lot about nihilism versus absurdism until making this video. But that quote really hit home for me. So I guess we can't really credit the Midnight Library for coming up with that. He is literally quoting a Camus quote. And another quote that I really connected with, and it's just very simple, just very quick in passing. Mrs. Elm tells Nora that she should never underestimate the big importance of small things. The little things that we don't even think about it, the nice things that we tell people, the simple act, I'll keep hammering this home, the simple act of being there. We underestimate how much that can potentially affect someone. When I was at that high school reunion, I do remember having a conversation with a friend who I hadn't spoken to in probably 20 years, and her last memory of me, keep in mind that we were best friends throughout our high school years. We were best friends, and for the longest time I just assumed that we just kind of drifted away, but her last memory of me was having a conversation that I was upset that she was moving away from our town, and I said something mean to her. And I didn't remember saying that. I didn't remember having that conversation. But for 20 years, she's been holding on to that as the last memory of our conversation. And it wasn't even anything that I thought of day to day. It wasn't anything that I would look back and realize that was something that had happened. I just assumed that we had drifted away. So it was just, again, never underestimate the big importance of small things. What you do today, how you treat people, how you talk to people. The final quote I want to kind of start closing out with here is Nora herself. She's laying this out throughout the Midnight Library. Occasionally, we get to read notes from her. We get to read letters or social media postings from Nora, either before she decided to end her life and ends up in the Midnight Library, which is described as being a place between life and death. And I'm not going to spoil if she ends up coming back to life, or if she ends up walking towards death, or if death comes for her. But we get to read these little snippets of her stories, notes that she's written, songs even, before she decided to end her life. And then also occasionally as she's living these other lives. So one of those other pieces here is we can't tell if any of those other versions would have been better or worse. Those lives are happening. It is true. But you are happening as well. And that is the happening we have to focus on. So stop worrying and enjoy the life that you have now. Realize what you have now. I'll leave you with a comparison to one of my favorite books when I was growing up, the Phantom Toll Booth by Norton Juster. There's a town where Milo encounters a boy, and their whole town has become invisible. Because as everybody was walking to work, they realized that they could get to work faster if they just stared down at their feet. And I think it's something that maybe a lot of people out there have done just by virtue of not wanting to be distracted. But what ends up happening is that they're just looking down at their own feet. And you can make the argument that they're being self-centered or at any rate, they're not appreciating what's around them. They're not appreciating what's right in front of them. They don't want to get distracted, so they just move forward. They just keep moving forward. And I think that spills into the Camus quotes. I think it spills definitely into this message, the message from the Midnight Library. If you're not paying attention because you're so focused on the negative, you're not going to live your life. This is what's happening right now. So make the most of it. Enjoy it. You have no limits. And the human experience can be absurd, but we have to rebel against that nihilistic thought of life is meaningless. We have to make our own meaning. So thank you for joining me today. If you liked this video, please let me know if you've read the Midnight Library. Leave a comment. Let me know if you didn't like it. Let me know what you did that was something impactful that you would have never realized. And like and subscribe, and have a great day.